Welcome. Gio and I are here today with Tim Hasse, who is the founder and CEO of General Provision with locations in South Florida. Tim, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me today.
Although he's calling in from Nashville with his microphone hanging over his head for those watching on YouTube.
I'm one of those weirdos. Yeah, I live in Nashville, operate the business in South Florida.
Well, no, I like it. It just shows that it can be done.
Can be done. Can be done.
Can be done. Okay. So we just saw you at Juicy in Salt Lake.
Yeah, that was another great event. I was pulled in.
I know. Andy was in Nashville.
GWA and Juicy.
You're making the rounds these days.
I was very reluctant. Gio, I was gonna give you the plug too. I was reluctant for years to be in the scene, but now I'm fully in the scene.
The scene. I think I remember talking about that on our podcast. How come we never see you? I think you gave Liz some credit because she, forced you into speaking at Chicago, which is where I knew of you. And I was like, I gotta have this guy on the podcast. But it's been almost a year. Crazy.
I'm just flying. That is the history though. Yep, Liz dropped. I was reluctant. Liz said you need to stop being ridiculous, get into the industry, and now we're here.
Okay, so now what advice would you give to somebody else who's like kind of an industry recluse?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, it applies the same way that our members pull value from co-working, right? I mean, people need people, right? I mean, you need other people, and it's an important part of building companies is to have people to lean on and to talk shop with. So for the longest time, I just felt like we were going in a little bit of a different direction, and I didn't want to get into the echo chamber.
Yeah.
And I still have a little bit of that fear, but from a human relationship standpoint, I'm so grateful that I've made it into the industry and got to meet great people like you guys.
Likewise. Gio, can you kick us off?
So I thought our time at GWA Immersive was awesome. It was good to be in that smaller setting and get to know people. And it's most time I've spent with you one-on-one. So I really enjoyed that. Your hospitality and willingness to show me around when you're actually just talking about Switchyard, right? And kind of we've had one of their investors and brokers on, and so it was fun to hear about that and then see it from your eyes, right? Because you not only a competitor, but you're actually a user, right? You're a member at Switchyard, so it was fun to have you show me around and hear more about kind of what your take on what that kind of model was, because it was funny. Right after I had left you, I called Jamie and I'm like, okay, I saw it. And she's like, do you like it? I'm like, surprisingly, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. That was awesome to spend some time with you for sure, and awesome to give you a little bit of tour. I know you know Nashville really well, but seeing this scene of these kind of products, and that's where a lot of our storyline overlaps, because we have a very similar ethos, although a very different take, but very similar experience. And that's how I ended up in co-working, is like I had another company that needed space and needed these solutions, and it's been awesome to see what we're doing as an industry evolve. And where how I describe things now is that we have this, if we're talking about the industry as hospitality, we finally have fast casual and high luxury and different service levels, and I think that's a meaningful place and time that we've arrived at for office.
I think for those that haven't heard you speak before and weren't on the podcast or didn't listen to the podcast with Jamie, what is your background? You just kind of alluded to how you got into it through your other company. You kind of want to talk about how you got into the space?
Certainly, yeah. I think it's not terribly romantic when I say we needed an office, but part of that is the truth. Is that so? I come from tech. In fact, I'm a designer by trade, and I worked in agencies in my early career. So branding and creativity were kind of the hallmark of my interests for a long period of time. Always focused on the digital side of things. So that's kind of really where I cut my teeth and building a career, was kind of transforming traditional agencies into the digital world, and took a corporate job. I was fortunate enough to see that go public, so I got some really cool experience while that private company IPO'd. And then I jumped onto my own and built a consultancy. Really building software was the focus. So when that was all happening, we're talking 2009, 2010, we were in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, building a tech company. and there wasn't a whole lot of people around us doing the same thing. It was very hard to find people. It was very hard to find conversations. And we were committed by force to hire a distributed team. We had to hire people all over the place, different countries, different states, different cities, because we needed talent, and they weren't easy, they weren't very accessible. And so we became a distributed team, a remote first team from day one. And that really changed everything from the GP story, and from then until now, this journey of exploring remote work and running a company from Nashville when it's headquartered in Fort Lauderdale. That's not at all uncomfortable for me at this point, 14 years later. And the point is, that's driven a lot of our decisions into this space. So we slowly were finding community, finding talent, and finding employees in South Florida for this tech company, building apps. And we needed a place to gather. And at that point, I had been exposed. I think I walked into my first co-working space in Seattle, Washington. And then I shared with Jamie a while back that this was during what I think is still the golden era of co-working, and that it was pure, organic, magic in the air, warehouse space, collaborative, no walls, open floor plan. But you walked into the room and you kind of just felt the magic of people collaborating. So I was trying to recreate that in South Florida, except really the intention was just to simply cover some of my rent, right? Like, I wanted to offset some of my expenses. So long story short, as a branding guy, creative guy, I wanted to establish this as its own entity, as its own brand, mainly to create this portfolio experiment. We wanted to create this experiment in community, this experiment in hospitality. And we didn't want to call it the same thing as the software company, because we definitely saw them diverting at some point, but there's also another challenge, right? To create a brand and to create an experience that was truly different than what we were doing in our day-to-day. So that's really how it began. It was we launched in the warehouse district in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was called Fat Village Flagler Arts and Technology, and we helped build that community up from really not much. It was the industrial, becoming gentrified neighborhood, and now it's fast forward to today. That property just got sold to Heinz, and they're redeveloping everything from the ground up. It's going to be a major project, but we were there in the early days, and we expanded 3 times in 3 years. That's when we realized we had a real business. So we had to start paying attention. We just added warehouse bays and added warehouse bays. Whatever came available, we would take it until we got the consecutive lineup in the original warehouse district. We added a second location in 2019, launched it in January of 2020, just in time for the pandemic. I should say we filled it up in January of 2020, just in time for the pandemic, and went through that whole experience just to come back around again, refill it. And we just expanded that space downtown Fort Lauderdale last year, and we're full again, ready to grow. So that's a little bit of my background. That's how we arrived.
Okay. So
you're still running your tech company, correct?
I still build software. Yeah. So that company still operates. I'm not as hands-on in that company. It's been around a little bit longer. We've been able to be really focused on great clients and great projects with a great team. So we're staying small. There's a period in time when I was foot on the gas pedal for both companies really hard, and that aged me pretty well. So I needed to kind of focus, and GP was really in this moment of really finding product market fit, really figuring out what we're doing. So now I'm really almost all of my energy is at GP, with some really share kind of responsibilities at the other company.
And you're just celebrating 10 years.
You saw that. It is our 10-year birthday. So it's strange saying that, because the first 3.5 to 5 years were really a passion project, right? There wasn't a business model. It wasn't really anything to really, we had no idea what we were doing. We still don't have anything figured out, is what I love to say, but it is 10 years. So the brand has celebrated that. And I think from a community celebration, we're quite proud and quite honored to have seen what has happened in our community and our customer base. But the city of Fort Lauderdale has grown so much in that decade. And yeah, it's definitely something that we're pretty excited about.
So can you share a little bit about your model? As Gio said, like it's Switchyards-esque. No private offices. Is that still true?
Not true. Correct.
Okay.
It's Switchyard-esque in that there is what I would describe. So I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions on what's happening in this industry. And, you have a newcomer like a brand like Switchyards. And what I take from that as a branding guy is this is a brand. And so who we are is that I think first and foremost, we're a brand. This is a branded experience. And I think that's where a lot of our community power comes from, because people are attracted and connected to our brand and what we're doing. But we are not an open floor plan. We are a members club. So from that standpoint, we take that positioning pretty seriously, in that it's a heavy food and bev component. We have a heavy events component. We do sell offices. We have 50 offices in the downtown facility. We have a full event venue and a thriving event business. We have a growing food and bev business, and we're going to continue to invest into that. We're working on our liquor license for a members-only balcony bar, and we have a heavy component of common area membership as opposed to just real estate arbitrage selling offices. So I think that's the totality. That's kind of the model. But I think if you're drawing comparisons to Switchyard's, the experience, we attract a younger demographic. We're 26 to 39. We're heavily branded, and we're kind of the back brigade, right? So the creative class, and it's a space with vibe, right? People want to get out of their house and spend time at GP.
Okay, now I see, but I can't find you. You don't mention offices on your
members
website.
do you have?
Wait, hold on. You don't. Yes. Why is that?
So because I'm really glad you asked that. The reason why we have most of our marketing funnel focus on the common area member is because that's the part that's hard to figure out, right? And I think you guys know that. I hear you say it all the time, right? Like, you don't want people touching that, right? That's what we're really good at. And so the thing is, like, once you sell your offices, it's like, what do you do until you build the next space, right? And we've been there 5 times in the last 10 years, right? We're like, oh, out of inventory. Now we're just like growing everything else, right? And so the intricate funnel, right? The real marketing driven, automated, deep sales investment is in the materialization of from a person at the coffee shop or a person that's working from home to converting to a customer. And so a lot of our positioning outwardly, I mean, you definitely see offices on our website. It's just further down the page, right? It's below the fold. You scroll down, you see it, but it takes you a while to get there because because most of the people that are on the web searching for our brand are looking for what they know of GP. Our brand represents this heavy membership base. And what we also found is just the way that customers come in the door and sign up and buy offices, that it's just a different audience. It's a different, we have a good amount of our members that do graduate to offices, right? Which is another fantastic reason for the membership model. Their business grows and they want a dedicated space, but they're largely different customers behaving very differently online. And so we've put most of our attention on the website to that common area membership.
I love it. I have one more thing to say, then I'll let Gio jump in.
Yeah.
I'm working with someone who's like, I want to create a space where people want to rep the brand, which I love. Like that, that's a certain something that is not that easy to accomplish. It's, I think it depends a lot on, sort of your background, and do you have that like a little bit of secret sauce to create what you've created and what Switchyards has. Like, certainly not every space that's not the case.
Well, I was invited back to GC this year to speak again, and I was tasked to speak about hospitality in the workspace, right? And my deck, I'm very opinionated, and what I really my big statement to everyone in Salt Lake is that I think a lot of us as operators have a little bit of fear about being overly branded in this business, and I don't really know where that comes from, but I think that that's the biggest opportunity for operators to really they have to take this seriously. And the reason why I believe that is because we're falling into this trap of commoditization, right? And if there's no real differentiation, if you don't really stand for something, and if you're a real estate person or you haven't done branding before, I understand how intimidating that is, but I'm a branding technology person that got into construction. And the point is, like, you just do it as an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like, are you a founder or not? Right. So I think that the point is you have to build a brand, especially what I'm seeing in behavior of a younger demographic. Right. I think that, that's kind of what we figured out is like, we know that our user comes online, they're doing a certain behavior online. We want to put the right questions and the right response in front of them on our website, and you can't do that as a nameless, faceless entity. And so, it takes a lot more work on the marketing side of things. But once again, you stay in the lane that you're good at. This is the world that we have a little bit more comfort in. But my challenge to the industry is that we have to do more of this. You know what I mean? Like, especially if we're diversifying, growing, and expanding into different product segments and different service offerings. Brand, what I was trying to say, and I got off track, is that that was the first thing that I mentioned in my hospitality deck, right? Like, because your brand is a representation of hospitality. It's your promise to your customer. What are you saying, and what are they expecting when they walk in the door? And so I think that a lot more operators need to take branding more seriously.
Okay, Gio, I'll let you pipe in.
So membership wise, how many memberships do you have?
I don't publish our membership count to the T, but we're tracking as we model spaces. We are trying to grow. We're trying to model everything out at 75 members per 1,000 square feet. So this singular space, we're not quite at 1,000 members yet, but we're going to be there soon.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So Tim, do you buy I think LG on the Switchyards podcast said, well, we opened this Switchyard location and we sold like 800 memberships in 8 minutes or something crazy like that. I mean, you might have been at this your path has been a little bit different because you were not, fully focused on the business for a long time. But what do you make of that?
I'm so impressed, and I think that we've reached the point where I can see how that playbook will happen in some degree for us. I don't know if we're going to be selling 800 memberships in 30 minutes like I've seen them do, but the pent up demand for our brand is starting to reach that point. And so this 10-year anniversary run for us, this would probably cap membership. We if you asked me that 3 years ago, I don't know what the right number. I'm always so impressed. I mean, I know how many offices and how many seats we have. We know how many meeting rooms we have. We certainly know our square footage. But when we're talking about how common area members use the space, I think it's really hard to put a cap on what the right usage is, and maybe other folks have gotten this to a science, but for us, it's really been a release, sell through, and then observe. And that's kind of how we operated to this point. So I think as we move into the future locations, we'll definitely have a little bit more knowledge. But every time I think that we're at capacity, we have happy members, we can move more in, and we keep doing that. So, but I think we're truly going to see that this year. We're finally going to see the end of like what is the right amount of utilization at this current location.
So I don't know if we were recording yet when this came up, but you moved to Nashville. You want to talk about that move and kind of your family and kind of what drove that decision?
Certainly, yeah. I'm a Floridian. I married a Floridian. The only thing that we know is Florida. And I grew up with a boat before a car. So the water was an important part of my life. I definitely had a hard time saying that I'm going to try something new, but married my wife, had a honeymoon baby, and we looked at each other and said, well, we're probably not going to leave Florida unless we intentionally try something else. And so we had our first child, and my wife is a physician. She finished up med school and her fellowship. And we basically decided that if we didn't do something now, we'd just be in South Florida for quite some time. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we were ready to try something new. I did have some business in Nashville for my software company, and job opportunities for my wife were promising here. So it was down to Brooklyn and Nashville, and we ended up in Nashville. And 3 children later, I think it's been a great decision. I think we've really enjoyed. We're in the city. We're not out in the suburbs or anything. We're here in East Nashville, enjoying it, just really missing the ocean. So outside of that, it's been a fantastic experience. I don't know if it's forever. I think that being a little bit more, I travel, right? So I'm splitting time. I spend a lot of time in Florida seeing the space and seeing the team. I don't always get to do that with my children and my family and my wife. So naturally, that's a bit of a pain point. So, even though we're certainly moving towards new markets eventually, Florida is going to keep a lot of my energy. So I don't know if Nashville's forever, but I'm running the company remotely, and it's been a great time here. This has been a fantastic change of pace for us. And I think 3 children in, it's been a wonderful decision. So we're enjoying that.
So you mentioned your wife. What does she do is she still working after the 4 kids in a
3
corporate
kids,
setting, or
3
is
kids.
she just in at home?
Yeah, no, she's fully
You
working.
didn't even let me finish. You didn't even let me finish. Or do you work, or does she work at home in that type of environment, trying to juggle 3 children?
She is fully working as a physician. She's in infectious disease, And so yeah, life is crazy, guys. I mean, we're freaking going nuts over here. So yeah, we have a 9, 4, and 2-year-old, and my wife just took a job at the beginning of this year. So I'll back up quickly to catch everything up on the personal life side. We moved to Nashville, and my wife took a academia job. So she was practicing at Nashville General Hospital while teaching at Meharry Medical College. So she kind of had this great academic pace, right? So we had all our babies, and we kind of got through some of the early stages. And just this year, my wife moved back into a hospital setting. So she's at Ascension St. Thomas. However, she's commuting to a little town outside of town for a little while. So the last 6 months, I guess we're on month 7, have been pretty hectic. She's coming back into town next month. But we're 2 working parents with 3 kids. So yeah, things are nuts from that side of things.
And no family in town.
We're starting to attract some family in town. I've got a brother-in-law in town. My mom actually lives not too far, so that's great too. But yeah, not a whole lot of outside support. So it's been nannies and babysitters. We have a deep bench of nannies and babysitters, that's for sure.
Got to do that with 3 kids.
You get to play Mr. Mom plenty.
Working from home, that's kind of I mean, that's why I love remote work. I get to run around, right? I'm now the first call, even when I was working remotely, my wife's last job. So my wife has some time when she's working from home as well. So it does become a bit of a full house, but I do love being able to kind of go back and forth. That there's like, if I get the call that somebody's sick. For years here, the first 2 years in Nashville, my other company had an office at WeWork. So I was going to WeWork every single day. And then now that I fully have taken up space at the home office, I definitely get a little bit more of that, I'm the guy on call kind of stuff. But, remote work is so great because I'm a believer, right? Like I live this, I breathe this. I think this is an important part. And GP's mission is to kind of keep making this sustainable. Like, this is what I care about. I care about making sure that decentralized work can happen forever. And I believe that your best work can happen anywhere. And I think that GP has a role in that vision. And I love kind of getting to try to pull the levers from 1,000 miles away. And I'm trying to share some of those best practices as we go along.
So for folks that haven't heard you talk about this, can you share a little bit about what hospitality looks like in your space? It's such like a buzzword right now. And I'm sure this is why Liz asked you to speak at the conference. I think it can mean a lot of different things. And I think a lot of operators or would-be operators are trying to figure out, what is that going to look like? How does it fit into the business model? So give us the version.
I think this is where I become a lot more opinionated. So as a technologist, I
like opinionated, by the way. We're uncensored.
Yeah, that's good.
Say whatever you want.
That's right. That's right. I guess my point is I'm seeing a lot of the trend of leaning out, and we talked everything from switchyards, staffless to Regis has a big component on these like staffless internet cafe of 2025 kind of mentalities, and I think that's super interesting. I've certainly learned to respect that there's hospitality in that, right? There's a lot of thinking and design thinking into that, and some of that thinking and how it's presented is the hospitality, albeit invisible hospitality. I come from the other side of the table on that conversation. As a technologist, I want to automate everything, right? But I think that when we're dealing with people, we want to be very, very careful about what touch points get automated and what touch points are serviced by a real human. And every adult has had this discomfort and disappointment of having the wrong thing automated or getting routed to the robo dialer, or getting sent offshore at the wrong time with the wrong person. So we know what that bad experience looks like. So to answer your question, Jamie, we're heavily service driven, and we're proud to be staffed and serviced. So when you walk in the door, GP, you're going to have the right person greet you. You're going to know, they're going to tell you where you need to go. They're going to help you with questions. But beyond that, the actual core hospitality offering, we run the space like a hotel and restaurant. So we have a staff on the ground. We call them our host team. Our club hosts are working the floor every single day. We run 2 hospitality carts a day as far as like running around the space, filling up coffee, taking up food orders, and delivering food to people's desks. We did build an app. Our software company built an app on top of Nexus that we're quite proud of. all that to say, you can use that. That's a core part of the hospitality touch point. You can order food and beverage from your desk and we deliver it right to you. We think that's kind of unique. We haven't seen many other people doing that. That's not the only reason why we do it, but we have been in this world where, you're grinding and you're in the zone and you just need another cup of coffee or you just need some calories to get you to that power session. That's right. So, we have a great cafe. I mean, where Gio's background image is, that's kind of our cafe section. The point is, that's obviously a social gathering place. People come and have human interaction there all day long. But we give people the choice to say, you know what, I need to focus. And so if I want my latte and sandwich delivered to my desk so I can power through a session, that's what the offering is. And so, yeah, so it's staffed and serviced first and foremost. Food and bev is a heavily important piece. And then as we grew into the event business, the catering side of that was a growth opportunity for us as well. So, we're using 4-person meetings as an opportunity for us to flex our event chops, right? Like I think that's a common misunderstanding in the industry is that, like when you have a 4 to 6-person meeting, you can wow and delight those people, right? Like you can bring in a coffee cart with snacks and it doesn't need to be a 100-person catered tab for us to call that an event. And our team is really starting to embody that culturally where, like there are so many opportunities for hospitality. And for us, just to simplify and sum it up, it starts with human to human interaction. And then we try to automate the back end stuff.
So back to Mr. Mom. I like it. What's your favorite thing to do with each of your 3 children?
Oh, yeah. So 9, 4, and 2, my oldest, there's a gap there. So she's 5 years older than everyone else. So she's definitely the big girl of the house. But we're we're tubing and skiing this summer for the first time. Tubing is happening, but we're getting out on the boat a lot more. But what I would probably say I'm going to be the most excited about is that she begins jiu-jitsu with me this week. So last week was her first class. She's hooked after 1 session, so she's going to be rolling around with us a lot more. So that's the big girl. But she would tell you that her favorite activity is definitively riding horses. So she's hooked on horses. So she's writing English, getting big into that. She plays soccer as well, but those are her current 3 things. She's at guitar practice as we speak, guitar lessons as we speak. So we kind of have to, my approach up until this age. So we're coming at the age where we're going to have to start kind of like deciding what you like. But my thinking up until this point was we're going to try everything. And then you're going to start to make some decisions and we'll start to hone it in. But I want you to get exposed to anything and everything that tugs at your heartstrings, and then we'll go from there. So that's the oldest. My middle child my oldest is Cree. My middle child is Sailor. And then my youngest boy, so 2 girls and a boy, my youngest boy is Cole. And he's turning 2 Thursday. And so almost messed that up. But my middle child is just turned 4, and she is absolutely the middle child, like character and mentality. She's in her princess moment, so we're just enjoying that because we thought for sure that she was going to be the bruiser and the tomboy, but now she's in her princess moment. So that's exciting. Everything aesthetic and everything beautiful right now. So that's the phase that she's in. I don't know if that's forever, but we're just letting her enjoy that. And then my little boy is as a menace. He's just a little monster. And I had these 2 angelic little daughters, and then in came baby boy, and he's not a girl, that's for sure. He's destroying everything and climbing, and he was running at 9 months. He broke his first arm that actually happened at Juicy, and and he just turned 2. So he's fun. He's a handful, and I love every second of that.
There's research that says kids should generalize, but society does not allow for that.
Yeah, things have changed,
so
right?
Complicated. Yeah.
Yep. Things have changed a lot on that. I think my hope right now, I played football in college. I did a little bit of the CFL thing after that. I love athletics, but I want my kids to be happy first and foremost. I'm not pushing anything. And if they feel inclined to triple down on something, I'll support that. But I would have no problem if she stayed doing 4 things. It's just a matter of us knowing that that's probably not sustainable when our 4-year-old becomes a little bit older, right? And then
Yeah,
round 3.
there's a logistical limitation at some
100%. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's a tough, culturally, it's really tough to not put your kids in, like, especially if they're athletic, the club sports that, practice 3 times, even at that age, right? They're practicing a ton and playing, and it's like, it's hard to fit in. It's hard to diversify, but good for them. So that's awesome. I'm going to switch back to, we're going to go back to.
So you were talking about, we kind of got into this. Yeah, we kind of got into this when we were together as far as growth goes. You were talking about wanting to do a beach club, right? So
Yep.
that's kind of one of your dreams. So you kind of want to talk about, what
Yeah.
your desire is there.
Yeah, so I think a future for GP is really hub and spoke for the most part. Generally speaking, we want to have a solid HQ space in the heart of a market, and then we want to support that with satellite spaces in that same market. And I think we're really trying to solve really looking through that lens through 2 different perspectives. One is meeting the need of dense neighborhoods, right? So we are a neighborhood facility. We are a neighborhood centric solution. Most of our users are coming within a 5-minute drive to our location. And we're in a dense urban neighborhood. So there's a lot of walking and biking right into our front door. We like freestanding, fully owned experiences. So top to bottom, we want to be able to own the experience for the most part. But the other lens is escape for work, right? Escaping the home and escaping mediocrity. And so I think from the standpoint of our growing events business, for the sake of retreats and offsites, and just for the sake of getting out of your house and having a productive day somewhere that feels like a vacation. For all those reasons, we're pretty excited about finding a beach location, a beach club. We've narrowed down our focus. I think we've got a couple great conversations moving. So hopefully we can land on something that's real and announce that before the end of the year. But that is not just the dream. It's kind of what we're marching towards, is having the real solution met in the urban core or the neighborhoods that we're focusing on, and then having these unique experiential driven spaces that are going to really be driven by both membership that we're getting very good at, but also the event business that's growing for us in the form of corporate bookings and retreats and offsites.
I'm curious, when you
So
think
I think
about.
it's always fun to talk about the event business. I think we have a lag.
Yeah, Gio, I think it's your internet. I think you're on a bit of a lag. So sorry. Go ahead, and I'll pipe in with my question when you're done.
No, I was going to ask about, I think the event business is always so interesting to dive into, just because so many people have tried it, and I think there's few that do it well, right? And so we've had a couple of guests like that on here. So kind of how does that business operate? I mean, how do you go find the event space and things like that?
Yeah, so the business we grew into it, but I would say if I could share any insights into our formula and how we arrived here, is that, so first of all, we grew the business in the early days by hosting our own events, right? We were trying to build community, and I don't think that we're alone in that as an operator. A lot of people do this, but we did this at such scale. I mean, we were exhausting ourselves. We were doing 3 to 5 of our own events a week, right? Like just like tearing down tables and lining up chairs, and because we didn't have the facility to really just host an event in the early days. It was a small space, and we were moving common area tables out and lining up chairs and throwing up the projector and having an event, right? And the point is we kind of built a reputation of kind of being a hub for that kind of connectivity. So when we designed and grew to the second location, we knew that we had to have an event space quasi built in, right? So we built a 100-person theater, but the theater is a central part of the facility, so it's common area during the day, right? You can have lunch there on the stage. You can use the bench seating as a spot to have a chat with somebody with. But the point is, it's a lot easier to turn over an event in a space like that. And so we have a 40-person training room, we have a 40-person balcony space, we have a couple outdoor spaces, and we have this 90-person theater. And so our reputation kind of allowed us to kind of slowly segue these sponsored events that we would produce and partner on our own into paying customers. So it was not really a aha moment. It was a slow build up into us growing the events business. And 10 years in and a good brand, good reputation, you just kind of start to begin to build the reputation of somebody who's good at this. Once we layered on our food and bev component, I think where we've netted out is that in a facility of our size, in the downtown core, there's not a whole lot of options outside of a hotel. And when you're a company of 100 people or less, and you're planning an offsite or a company retreat, there's somebody who's kind of drawing the straw and saying, this is my event now, and they're not happy about it. It's another stressor in their life. And so we're just taking that same service approach that we bring on the ground to meeting the need of these customers at the B2B and corporate event level and saying, listen, we're going to do all this for you, right? We're going to do catering for you. We're going to do AV for you. It's all built in. It's an easy price to say yes to. We're just going to let you say, yes, 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 let's do it. And that's how we've been winning. Additionally, it's a more interesting environment than a windowless center room in the middle of a hotel. So we're just kind of starting to win that business. The third-party online brokers are certainly helping too. We get signed up on all of those. We get the event pipeline of opportunities that come through the door. And so yeah, it's been slowly building up to the point where now we have one salesperson that's dedicated to event sales. That's the marketing side of that is fairly automated. But I think, Jamie challenged me last year when she first brought me on to talk about this stuff. Nothing happened fast for us, right? Like, I think we have just been consistently building, and I didn't give up, right? We've been adding this complication to our lives, right? Food and bev, events, membership, and we just stuck with it. And so there's a lot of people that don't have the patience to stick with these things, but the real secret sauce is that we have banked our small wins and have stayed consistent and haven't given up on the business line unless we knew for sure it wasn't going to make sense.
I love that, because I was just thinking, like, what was the moment when you're like, yeah, let's do this really complicated hospitality and event model? Because it's a lot more moving parts than selling
100%.
offices, right? I mean, I just love your perspective. It feels like when I asked you, like, where are the offices on your website? You're like, well, those like are easy to sell, right? So the funnel is really about, everything else, which is more complicated. And I guess it's just a choice to embrace that and say, this is the business we're going to run. And this is what we love. Okay. I'm so enamored by the beach club idea, which also feels like, it's kind of brave and different, and it's, not a risk, but just like you're taking a path that you think sort of like the Steve Jobs approach. Like, no, I'm going to show you where you want to do these things, host your events and spend time. You have this vision.
Well, I think it's not really just licking my finger and putting it up to the wind and hoping. I will say that the technologist in me and the business that I've created before this and the experimentation mindset has allowed me to really embrace data, embrace feedback. We ask people, you know what I mean? Like, would you work here or work there? Right. And so I know that I'm sure you hear this a lot, but in what we've definitely come to in our thinking is that we don't really compete against other operators in our markets. Yeah. We're really competing against people's homes, and we're competing against coffee shops, and we're competing against hotel lobbies, and we're competing against an experience. And so once we really understood that kind of like broadens everything, and like I say broadens in the sense that like the opportunities become a lot more clear, our vision becomes more focused. But when we're in an industry of office people, me saying I'm going to pop an office on the beach and call it a co-working space, that sounds insane. But when our community is really drawn to us because we're more social driven and that we're meeting the needs of them as a once or twice a week office because they're trying to get out of their house, it's an escape from the home, then that makes a lot more sense for us and our user base. So that's where, coming back to this whole a little bit of resistance to jump too far into the industry.
Totally. Because your framing is totally different. And it's like either you don't want to spend time with the people who are like, we make offices, and the thing you mentioned earlier or the perspective you mentioned earlier, there are operators who don't want to brand their space because they want it to sort of be a proxy for their customer's own office space, which, it can work, I guess. but it's like your perspective is no, you want people to be so excited that they're hosting a client at General Provision. Like
Yeah.
there's value in that. It's fine. It's better that it's not your own boring office.
They're
Like,
ambassadors of the brand, right? Like
Yeah.
the brand becomes part of them. And yeah, you're absolutely, they're proud to say that they're a member of GP, as opposed to, yeah, this is my office. See, kind of like I'm
Right.
not, we're not pretending that it's my office.
Yeah.
I think that ship has
See
sailed a
my
long time
logo?
ago.
Yeah.
So that's kind of thinking. And from that perspective, I mean, I see a world of opportunity. It's taken us a long time to get here. We've been investing heavily in technology, heavily in building this community to get to, I mean, I get challenged a lot. Like, why don't we have 5, 10, 20 spaces yet? Right. And the reality is, one, as a tech guy who's raised a lot of money with my clients and have seen a lot of those companies get fully owned by other people, I want to maintain ownership of this company. I wanted to not raise VC money faster than we knew what to do with it. And so we're being a little bit more organic, a little bit more intentional. Speed is a really awesome superpower. You know, a couple cycles of this construction thing, I realized also that I don't want to spend the rest of my life building spaces out. As much as I love design and the experience, and that's really a hallmark of what we do differently, that you walk in the door, it doesn't feel like everything else. However, we want to move quickly when we know exactly the chess move to make, because I don't want to spend 3 years planning spaces, every single location, 1.5 to 3 years of construction. And I've learned enough in the first couple iterations of that to say that my life will move too fast for me to be okay with that. So I don't know what the solution is there, okay?
Yeah, and I think such a big part is intentionality, right? Is being intentional as to why you're building what you're building, right? And I think that's something that in my time with you, you've been very methodical. And I think COVID changed that for a lot of people, right? I think COVID allowed for some of these people to really step back and be like, what's my why, right? Why am I doing this? What's important to me?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick anecdote on that too, because, you know, leading up to COVID, I shared a little bit. I walked in my first co-working space, full open office, warehouse, and that was what I was drawn to. It was amazing, right? So we built that. We didn't have any offices on the first V1, and then WeWork was getting all the news, right? Like the years were going by, and there's this Regis, WeWork, and I thought that we needed to just do what they're doing, right? And I really thought that even though my instinct was build a community for remote workers, without offices, everyone was saying we weren't in the business, right? And so that's when I was like, I had this internal conflict. Like, am I a co-working space? Am I something else? But when we signed the big lease for, you know, it was a big step going from the warehouse district to prime real estate in downtown Fort Lauderdale for us at that time in the business. And the point that I'm making is I felt like I kind of needed to do the sure thing, right? Like do what these bigger operators are doing. And we did that. We put a bunch of offices in the space that worked out fine, but I wasn't going to give up on my common area member. I wasn't going to give up on the remote worker. And then COVID happened, right? And when COVID happened, what I was trying to get to is I had an office in New York City at a WeWork. I had an office in Nashville at a WeWork, my tech company. And then I was running my co-working space in South Florida. And everyone's gone. Everyone's empty. And all of a sudden I realized that this remote work thing that I instinctively felt like was right or was my community, it's going to be the conversation for I don't know how long, but it feels like there's going to be a long cycle of remote work. So that's when we tripled down on serving remote workers. And I said, you know, like we're going to come out of the pandemic as the remote work solution, and we're not deviating from that at this point.
Jamie and I are both like, who's next? Who's next? I see your eyes rolling.
No, I was just looking at you, and I totally I had my next question, and I just it completely left my brain. That's why I was like, uh-oh.
So let's do this. What about your wife? How does she feel about the business? How does she motivate and drive you to keep doing what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I'll say about building a digital tech company versus a brick and mortar is that my wife, I would also say my other family members, they didn't really know what I was doing before. They thought there was like building this Ponzi scheme or something, because everything is online, right? Like we're building things that you can't touch and feel. And you know, when I left the corporate world to build my own thing, before I had General Provision as an idea, I don't really know for sure if anybody in my family knew what I was doing, including my wife, right? So building software, building code.
He makes stuff, he comes back.
just, I don't know what he's doing, right? I don't know what he's doing. So it certainly wasn't my motivation, but I do think that overall my wife and my family have a lot better understanding of what general provision is as opposed to a company that writes code, so they love the experience. Part of me, I'm really motivated to grow GP, but where I have conflict is and part of me wants to, because I've been a part of the Silicon Valley fast track tech VC driven world for half of my life. Part of me is really excited about trying to build a generational business through GP. And I don't really know what that means. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but I wouldn't be upset if this company was around for 50 years and long after I'm around.
It'd be a great place for your kiddos to hang out.
They love it. Yeah. So I guess I dodged your question a little bit. My wife and kids love it. And going into GP with them is such an honor. They're proud of the brand. And my wife is just an awesome feedback loop for me because, you get to that place where there's no nonsense in that stuff, right? Like my wife won't sugarcoat it. She's like, that's not okay. Like you got to change that right away. And I do love that.
Okay, so my thought when you were talking about the model and the offices and kind of sticking to, the core of what you feel is important about the business is I do think I love that you're, not shy to share your perspective and, you referred to yourself as opinionated. I think that's important for the industry right now because I do think we're at this crossroads of like sort of what people think works. And I'm putting Gio in this camp because Gio is very comfortable with lots of private offices on a, dense floor plan. And there's a lot of people who want to do something different and it looks more like what you're doing. And they're trying to solve like lifestyle, not either solve lifestyle problems. We get a lot of people who want, childcare in spaces, or they're trying to create this experience, but it's really new for the industry, right? So, and I think, that's partly why you're like, yeah, I'm going to stay sort of distant from that conversation. Like someone like you might be better off going to like, I don't know, the hotel conferences or, like more hospitality focused because that's still such a small piece of what we're thinking about. But I think the end user maybe is moving faster in terms of what they're looking for. But from a business model perspective, like to pro forma, what you're doing is hard from scratch, right? Like, so you've sort of built it up and gotten comfortable with here's what we do, here's how it works, here's how we staff it, here's what the model looks like. But to go after that from scratch, it's not a typical co-working model for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'll say to that is that we didn't start with all this complexity, right? We grew into it intentionally to the sake of we chose it. We didn't know if it was going to work, but we ran the experiment enough to validate it, and then we continued on. So we will 100%, we will pro forma out the full service set when we get to the next HQ, right? The next real hub. I think there's still a lot of questions that we have around what is a spoke, right? What is a satellite space? Is it fully serviced, right? Do we just need smaller versions of what we're doing, or do they need to be a little bit lighter touch? And they're everything kind of rolls up to the hub, right? But so that's where my instinct is driving, is that I think that we can afford to have some of these lighter weight experiences that they're still very branded and they solve the problem, but they roll up to the bigger community and the bigger event space. And that's the direction that we're heading. So, I know that just knowing the body of knowledge that you guys possess, I know the formula of having big enough spaces, right? Like, we need 20 to 30,000 square feet. For us, we're probably going to be looking at satellite spaces that are closer to 5 to 10,000 square feet, as long as they're serving, they're a spoke to a hub, right? As long as they're rolling up. So we wouldn't launch a new space that didn't have the overlapping community in a new market that's only 5,000 square foot. We've definitely done that, and that was not a real business, right, for us. So we talked a lot about switch yards. They're obviously figuring that out, but once again, it's very different, right? Like we want to have the amenities. I mean, I got to tell you too, like there are problems it's a different behavior, right? We're talking about knowing our user and what our user wants. I had internet connections issues today. I got the text from Comcast saying that they're doing work on my network, and I was like, oh crap, am I gonna have to book a room somewhere? And I can't be in a booth at Switchyard for longer than an hour. You're not allowed to book that, right? And I have a meeting after this and a meeting after that one. So I'm back to back, right? So the point is there's a different problem being solved there, right? And we're inviting people to build their full companies at GP. And that's what the office is for, right? That's what the dedicated desks are for. We certainly have some common area people that rely on it for that. And then we have this large component of users that are just coming in once or twice a day, right? But the point is, we're not ready to relinquish the idea of a true office that can build your dreams at. I mean, what motivated me to build this thing is that there is something there that you can rely on, that you can build the company of your dreams from. And the lightweight version of that, I think, is definitively a spoke. It's not like the full direction for us. We need to have a full hub for us to really establish our brand and the growth going forward.
Uh-oh, we're over. Gio, do we have time for the quick wrap-up question? Yes. Okay. So, Tim, you are at an industry event and you're still forging your own mindset and path, but you show up at an after party and there's karaoke. What's your karaoke song?
I should have known you're asking this, Jamie. I've listened to enough of your podcasts to know. And, you know, this is such a lame duck answer. I've never sang karaoke.
Never.
I'm not doing it. To answer your question, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like, this is like the deepest insecurity of mine is singing karaoke
in public.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I like the worst. I have a couple skills. Singing is not even, it's so far from my skill set. And just having fun at a karaoke, because I'm such a bad singer that like I've never even done it. So I'm not going unless you guys are going with me and I'm singing, I'm whispering, I'm lip syncing the backup.
You're lip syncing. Okay, so you'd lip sync in a group setting. Okay.
So pathetic. I know, that's terrible.
It's good to get the behind the scenes on what goes on.
I know my limits, Jamie. I know my limits.
Okay, good. All right. Gio has a call. We have to wrap up. Tim, thank you for joining us and sharing more of your story. I'm super excited to continue to watch your journey.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care.